The emergency klaxons at Mercy's Edge Medical Station had been wailing for exactly 3 minutes and 47 seconds when Captain Jake Morrison's mangled cargo hauler came spinning through the docking bay like a drunk whale having an existential crisis. The ship hit the deck with all the grace of a dropped piano, sending sparks and various unidentifiable fluids spraying across the pristine medical facility floor. Dr. Vex Thornscale, chief surgeon and professional warrior, nearly malted his scales on the spot. In his 12 years of practice, he'd seen Zephyrian tentacle rot, Quillan hive mind syndrome, and even the infamous Bloraxian exploding kidney disease. But humans were completely outside his wheelhouse. They were those weird bipedal mammals from Sol 3 who apparently ate poison for fun and considered physical contact a form of greeting. The cargo bay doors hissed open, and out walked Jake Morrison. Well, walked might be generous. He more accurately shambled, considering the 2-meter piece of twisted metal protruding from his torso like the world's worst fashion accessory. Blood was definitely happening, though Jake seemed remarkably unconcerned about this development. "Morning, Doc." Jake called out cheerfully, as if impalement was just another Tuesday. "Hope you don't mind the mess. Traffic was murder out there, literally in my case." Dr. Thornscale's inner eyelids fluttered in confusion. The human should be screaming. Every other species in the galaxy would be screaming. The Quillan would be harmonizing their screams in 17-part agony. The Zephyrians would have already passed out from the trauma. But this human was making jokes. "You are injured," Dr. Thornscale observed, his medical training kicking in despite his bewilderment. "Just a flesh wound," Jake replied, examining the metal spike with clinical interest. "Well, flesh and several vital organs, but who's counting? Say, you wouldn't happen to have a good trauma team here, would you? I'm starting to think this might need professional attention." Dr. Thornscale activated his emergency beacon with trembling claws. Within moments, his surgical team came rushing into the bay, led by Nurse Pip, a diminutive avian whose species was known for their excellent bedside manner and tendency to faint at the sight of blood. Nurse Pip took one look at Jake and promptly lived up to her species' reputation, hitting the floor with a soft thud. "Is she all right?" Jake asked, genuinely concerned. "Should I call for help?" "Oh wait, I guess you are the help." This is awkward. Section 2, the operating theater. 10 minutes later, Jake found himself on the operating table in Mercy's Edge's premier surgical suite, still engaged in casual conversation as if he were at a coffee shop rather than bleeding internally. Dr. Thornscale had managed to revive Nurse Pip, though she was still looking rather green around the beak. "So," Jake said conversationally, watching the surgical team prep their instruments, "first time operating on a human?" Dr. Thornscale's silence was answer enough. "Thought so. Don't worry, Doc, we're not that different from most carbon-based life forms. 2 lungs, 1 heart, standard digestive tract. Though I should mention, if you see any weird scarring, that's from my appendix removal. Nasty little evolutionary leftover. Those things. Completely useless organ that occasionally tries to kill you. Nature's got a real sense of humor." Nurse Pip was frantically consulting her medical database. "Dr. Thornscale," she whispered urgently, "the human pain threshold readings are. This can't be right." "What do they say?" Dr. Thornscale asked, positioning his surgical scanner. "According to this, humans should experience approximately 47 times more pain sensitivity than Quillan in this type of injury. He should be in complete neurogenic shock." Jake overheard and chuckled. "Oh, I am. Hurts like hell. Pardon the expression. But screaming never helped anybody, you know. Plus, I figure you folks are nervous enough without me adding to the soundtrack." Dr. Thornscale paused, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. "You are? In pain?" "Doc, there's a piece of my cargo hold's bulkhead currently redecorating my spleen. Of course I'm in pain. But pain's just information, right? And right now the information is telling me I need surgery, not a concert." The surgical team exchanged bewildered looks. Dr. Kelp, the anesthesiologist, approached with his sedation kit. "We should put him under immediately," he bubbled in his aquatic accent. "The trauma readings are off our charts." "Actually," Jake interjected politely, "I'd prefer to stay conscious if you don't mind. Local anesthetic should be fine. I've got some experience with field medicine, and I might be able to help if things get complicated." Dr. Thornscale nearly dropped his laser scalpel. "Help? You are the patient?" "Sure, but I'm also a former combat medic. Did 3 tours in the Proxima conflict before I went into cargo hauling. Trust me, Doc. I've seen worse than this. There was this one time on Kepler 442 billion where a plasma grenade took out half my squad's medical bay. Had to perform surgery on myself with a broken arm and a concussion. Now that was a Tuesday." Nurse Pip checked her readings again. "His vital signs are actually improving." "How is that possible?" Jake grinned. "Endorphins, nurse. Wonderful things. Human body's natural painkillers. We're basically walking pharmaceutical factories when we need to be. Evolution's way of making sure we don't die from stubbing our toes." Dr. Thornscale began the initial incision, waiting for the inevitable screaming. Instead, Jake continued his commentary. "Nice technique, Doc. Clean entry angle, minimal tissue damage. You've got good hands for this. Say, is that a Mark V surgical laser? I haven't seen one of those since the war. Solid piece of equipment, though the calibration can be tricky in high humidity environments." 30 minutes into the operation, Dr. Thornscale was beginning to understand why humans had such a reputation in the galactic community. Not only was Jake providing running commentary on his own surgery, but he was actually offering helpful suggestions. "Might want to watch the angle there, Doc," Jake said calmly as Dr. Thornscale navigated around a particularly damaged section of liver. "Humans have a nasty habit of bleeding from the hepatic artery if you nick it wrong. Trust me, it's messier than a Bloraxian birthday party." The surgery was proceeding smoothly until the emergency alarm started blaring again. Dr. Thornscale's hands froze as Nurse Pip received the incoming transmission. "Mining accident in Sector 7, she announced, her voice tight with stress. "Multiple casualties incoming. Severe trauma cases." Through the observation windows, they could see the medical bay erupting into controlled chaos as gurneys rolled in carrying injured miners. The sounds that followed were exactly what Dr. Thornscale had expected from Jake earlier, screaming, wailing, and general expressions of agony that translated across species barriers. "Sounds like you're about to have a busy day," Jake observed, seemingly unbothered by the fact that his surgeon's attention was now divided. "How's your trauma team's stress response?" Dr. Thornscale's scales were beginning to pale. Not good. Dr. Kelp has anxiety attacks during high-pressure situations. Nurse Pip faints at unusual blood colors. And he paused, embarrassed. "I have trouble focusing when patients are screaming." Jake nodded understandingly. "That's rough, Doc. Tell you what, why don't I help with the pep talks? I've got some experience keeping people calm under pressure." Before Dr. Thornscale could object, Jake raised his voice toward the main medical bay. "Hey there, folks, I know it hurts, but you're in the best hands in the sector. Dr. Thornscale here once reattached a Zephyrian's entire nervous system during a solar storm. You're going to be fine." The screaming noticeably decreased. "How did you know about the Zephyrian case?" Dr. Thornscale asked, his confidence slightly boosted. "Lucky guess based on the trophy on your desk and the way you handle neural tissue. Keep working, Doc. I'll handle crowd control." Jake began a steady stream of encouragement directed at the other patients, somehow managing to be reassuring while still being operated on. "Remember, folks, pain is temporary, but medical bills are forever, so let's make sure these fine doctors do their jobs right the first time." Despite the chaos, Dr. Thornscale found himself working with unprecedented focus. Something about Jake's calm presence was infectious, spreading through the medical bay like the opposite of panic. As Dr. Thornscale carefully extracted the largest piece of shrapnel from Jake's abdomen, he finally gave in to his burning curiosity. "I must ask," he said, his voice steadier now, "how is this possible? Your species' pain tolerance defies all biological logic." Jake chuckled, though it came out slightly strained as the doctor hit a particularly sensitive nerve cluster. "Oh, we feel pain all right, Doc. We just have a different relationship with it. See, humans figured out pretty early that pain is just another thing to manage, like taxes or terrible music." "But surely there are limits," Dr. Thornscale pressed, fascinated despite himself. "You'd think so, wouldn't you? But consider this. Humans voluntarily go to places called dentists, where other humans drill holes in their bones and scrape away diseased tissue, often while conscious. We call this routine maintenance." Nurse Pip nearly fainted again. "That sounds like torture." "Oh, that's nothing," Jake continued cheerfully. "We also engage in activities called exercise, where we deliberately cause micro-tears in our muscle tissue for the purpose of making it stronger. Some humans even pay money to have other humans cause them controlled physical stress in places called gyms." Dr. Thornscale paused his work. "This cannot be accurate." "Doc, I once knew a woman who ran 26 miles through the desert for fun. She called it a marathon. When she finished, her feet were bleeding, her muscles were screaming, and she was completely dehydrated. You know what she said when someone asked if she was okay?" Jake grinned. She said, "Same time next year." The surgical team was now listening with rapt attention, their own patients temporarily forgotten in the face of this anthropological revelation. "And don't get me started on human cuisine," Jake continued as Dr. Thornscale began suturing internal damage. "We have foods that are literally designed to cause pain. Capsaicin, the chemical that makes peppers hot, is basically a plant's attempt to prevent mammals from eating it. Humans not only ignored this evolutionary warning. We cultivated peppers to be even more painful and then held contests to see who could tolerate the most." "Why?" Dr. Kelp bubbled from his station, genuinely confused. "Because it was there, I guess. Humans have this weird compulsion to prove we can handle whatever the universe throws at us. Pain, danger, impossible odds, we take it as a personal challenge. There's actually an Earth saying, 'That which does not kill me makes me stronger.'" Dr. Thornscale was taking notes on his secondary screen while he worked. "Fascinating. And this philosophy extends to medical treatment?" "Absolutely. Look, Doc, I've been conscious for this entire procedure because I trust you to do your job, and I want to make sure I can help if something goes wrong. But more importantly, I've seen what happens when medical staff panic. Scared doctors make mistakes, and mistakes in surgery tend to be permanent." Jake's voice became more serious, though still maintaining its underlying calm. "I was a combat medic. Remember? I've held dying soldiers while bombs exploded overhead. I've performed field surgery in foxholes while enemy fire was lighting up the sky. You know what I learned? The patient's job isn't to make the doctor's job easier by being quiet. The patient's job is to stay alive long enough for the doctor to save them. And sometimes that means being the calm one in the room." Just as Dr. Thornscale was preparing to close Jake's primary incision, the station's lights flickered and died. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, bathing the medical bay in eerie red light, but the damage was already apparent. The life support system's main processor had failed, and without it, the station's atmosphere recycling would shut down within the hour. Panic erupted throughout the medical bay. Patients who had been calmed by Jake's earlier encouragement began screaming again. Medical staff ran between stations, their training insufficient for this level of crisis. Dr. Thornscale's hands began shaking as the magnitude of the situation hit him. "Doc," Jake said quietly, his voice cutting through the chaos, "I need you to listen to me very carefully." Dr. Thornscale looked down at his patient, expecting to see fear finally breaking through Jake's calm facade. Instead, he saw something that chilled him more than panic: complete professional focus. "The life support failure isn't the real problem," Jake continued, his medic training taking over. "The real problem is that everyone's about to start hyperventilating, which will consume our remaining oxygen twice as fast. You need to get control of this situation right now, or we're all going to die not from system failure, but from our own panic response." "But I don't know how to." "Yes, you do," Jake interrupted firmly. "You're the chief surgeon. These people look to you for leadership. Start giving orders. Send your most reliable staff to manually restart the backup life support. Get the patients organized into breathing exercises to conserve oxygen. And for the love of all that's holy, stop shaking. Your team can see you, and if you panic, they panic." Dr. Thornscale took a deep breath, Jake's words somehow cutting through his fear. "What about your surgery?" Jake glanced down at his partially closed incision and shrugged. "I'll live, probably. But if we don't get life support back online, the surgery won't matter anyway. Go be a leader, Doc. I'll handle patient morale from here." As Dr. Thornscale moved to take command of the emergency response, Jake's voice rose above the chaos once again. "All right, everyone, listen up. This is what we call in the business a character-building exercise. The good news is we're on a medical station, so we're in the right place if anyone has a heart attack from stress. The bad news is, if we all start breathing like we're running marathons, we'll use up our air faster than a Quillen at an all-you-can-eat buffet." The comparison was absurd enough to get a few nervous chuckles, and Jake seized the moment. "Here's what we're going to do. Everyone take a deep breath in for 4 counts, hold for 4, out for 4. It's called box breathing, and it's going to keep us all alive long enough for Dr. Thornscale's team to work their magic on the life support." Remarkably, the patients began to comply. Even some of the medical staff found themselves following Jake's instructions, their panic subsiding into manageable concern. "That's it," Jake encouraged, still lying on the operating table with his surgery half finished. "Remember, folks, panic is just fear that's forgotten to think. And thinking is what separates us from the vacuum of space and certain death. So let's keep thinking, keep breathing, and keep trusting that our medical team knows what they're doing." From across the bay, Dr. Thornscale coordinated the emergency response with newfound confidence, Jake's calm leadership giving him the foundation he needed to do his job. 2 hours later, the life support systems were fully operational, the mining accident victims were stable, and Jake Morrison was finally getting his surgery completed. The medical bay had returned to its normal controlled chaos, but there was a different energy now, a sense of shared accomplishment that hadn't been there before. Dr. Thornscale put in the final suture and stepped back, exhausted but oddly exhilarated. "The procedure is complete," he announced. "You should make a full recovery, though I recommend several weeks of restricted activity." Jake finally allowed himself to wince as the local anesthetic began wearing off. "Thanks, Doc. You did good work, especially under pressure. Not many surgeons could have handled that crisis while finishing an operation." "I had help," Dr. Thornscale admitted. "Your calm under pressure was remarkable. I have never seen anything like it." Jake smiled tiredly. "That's the thing about humans, Doc. We're not actually braver than anyone else. We're just really, really good at being stubborn about staying alive." As Nurse Pip ran the final diagnostics, Dr. Thornscale found himself asking the question that had been bothering him for hours. "Jake, I must know. During the entire procedure, even during the emergency, you never once cried out in pain. You never showed fear. Why didn't you scream?" Jake was quiet for a long moment, and for the first time since he'd walked into the medical bay, his expression became completely serious. "Because you needed me not to," he said simply. "Look, Doc, I was in agony. That piece of metal went through parts of me that have more nerve endings than a Zephyrian empathy node. The pain was so bad I could taste colors. But you were scared, your team was on edge, and scared medical professionals make mistakes that kill people. He shifted slightly, grimacing at the movement. "I've been on both sides of the operating table, Doc. I know what it's like to try to save someone while explosions are going off and people are screaming. The patient who stays calm, who trusts you to do your job, who doesn't add to the chaos. That patient has a much better chance of walking out alive." Dr. Thornscale stared at his patient with something approaching awe. "You endured excruciating pain to keep us calm?" "Didn't want you to panic," Jake said with a shrug that he immediately regretted. "Panicked doctors make mistakes, and I quite like being alive. Besides, someone had to be the adult in the room, and I was the one with the hole in my chest, so it seemed like my responsibility." Nurse Pip looked up from her readings. The psychological profile makes sense now. Humans don't have higher pain tolerance, they have higher purpose tolerance. They can endure anything if they believe it serves a greater good. "That's one way to put it," Jake agreed. "We're really just too stubborn to die quietly." Dr. Thornscale was already planning his paper for the Galactic Medical Journal when the station administrator arrived with an official-looking tablet. "Captain Morrison," the administrator said formally, "on behalf of Mercy's Edge Medical Station, I'd like to offer you a position as our Chief Trauma Counselor. Your performance during today's crisis was unprecedented." Jake looked around the medical bay, at the staff who were moving with new confidence, at the patients who were resting peacefully instead of screaming in terror, and at Dr. Thornscale, who was standing straighter than he had when Jake first arrived. "Trauma counselor, huh?" Jake mused. "Do I get medical benefits? Because apparently I have a talent for getting impaled." And somewhere in the distance, the sound of Jake Morrison's laughter mixed with the gentle hum of perfectly functioning life support systems, creating the most reassuring sound in the galaxy, the sound of humans refusing to give up.